Hey guys. Oh, look at how dark that is. Hey. Let me see if I can get some light in here. No. Hey guys. Whoa, I gotta see. You see me? I'm here at the Plymouth Art Center in Plymouth, Wisconsin, and we are going to be doing this tonight live and from the Plymouth Art Center in Plymouth, Wisconsin. Now, I just got back from dinner and I did have one margarita, and so we may have to watch out for the beer that we're eating today. Anyways, we are going to be doing a picture of a cow. This is cheese capital. Plymouth, Wisconsin is cheese capital of Wisconsin. And so we're going to be here doing a cow. Now, this cow, Betsy, is traveling to Europe and Switzerland. And so we're going to put him into that scene. But let's see who's all here. And actually, one of my students that was boy, look how dark I am. Guys, sorry about that. I didn't check out the lighting in this place. But we're going to be doing Katrina here, who was in my Dillman's class, is now gave me a whole case of Leinenkugels, and I never had this juicy peach. So we're going to rate the juicy peach from Wisconsin. Actually, I think they're brewed right in Milwaukee. And so we're going to try this one first. So cheers, everybody. Juicy peach Leinenkugels. Never had it, but oh, that's good. Nice and you know how I like the sweet stuff, um, the sweet beers. Very good. I'm gonna give that a 10. I love that, especially after having, I guess, a margarita. It tastes really good. Anyways, let's see what's all here. I have to look in the distance here. And sorry if this is kind of dark. I never looked to see if this part was too dark or not. Hey, everybody. So we have Pamela, Sue. Hey, Sue. Hey, Marianne. Lainey. Hey, somebody new, I think. Marianne, Dawn, Pamela. And so today we're working on something a little bit differently. Today we're going to be working on a panel. And let me just show you really quickly. Let me first go through everything that we normally go through. And that thing is my website at davidartbecker.com and beckerart.net. So that's my website. And just pick up anything that I'm doing that you want to know about me and where I'm teaching and all that is on my website at davidartbecker.com or BeckerArt.net. All right, and so we're going to go right to our materials. Materials are a Holbein. And please let me know if anything's, this is remote, so I'm not in my studio. I'm here at the Plymouth Arts Center in Plymouth, Wisconsin. Not too far from Sheboygan, and not too far from, where else are we close to? Kohler, Wisconsin, not too far from there. And so here's my work. Here's my materials. Holbein watercolors. We have a little bit of. We're not using any masking fluid, and we're not using Stonehenge Aqua today. We're using a panel which I painted with gesso ground, and I'll show you what that's all about. And let's go right to our value study. And here's Miss Betsy here. We're doing a Wisconsin cow who's traveling up to Europe. So that's really kind of fun, you know. And they have a big two sculptures actually I've seen in the town of one of a cow, a black and white cow, and we're gonna make this cow look like it's in Switzerland. And this is actually a scene that I had put together in Photoshop AI. One day I will have to show you how I did this, and you can pretty much put anything together. Photoshop nowadays can make your pictures unbelievable. Now, there's a couple things, excuse me, a couple things here that I have to watch out for, and that this dark right here, if I squint my eyes or you see the black and white, my lights go through the whole background and then the face of the cow. That's it. That's my light. And my darks are the rest. The ears, the body, the bell, even this land down here that has a little bit of gray in it, or I mean middle tone, that will be a dark. That's considered a dark so that the lights will be the mountains, the sky, and Betsy's little face here. And I shouldn't say Betsy, right? Because this guy's got horns. I'm not really up on my cow information, but we call them Betsy or her Betsy, or it could be a man's name. That's okay. Hey, hey, Evie. Yeah, Evie was at dinner. Evie, who's just online now, she was at the. She also had. I'm not sure if she had a margarita, but thanks for taking me over to the Mexican place and having a frozen margarita. Because now I'm slurring my words, right? All right. Hey, Barbie. Hey, Lucia, Marianne, Tina. Tina, don't you live close by here? I think up in Wisconsin up here. All right, so let's get going with so again, this is what the lights are in the dark. So let me go right to my tabletop to show you what I'm working on today because it's a little bit different what we're doing today. So right here, as you can see, oh no, I gotta move. The lights went out. Hold on. It's on a timer. Here we go. That may happen. That's okay. The art center here has motion sensors so that lights are go off if we don't move around a little bit. So here what I'm working on is a panel. It's a wood panel. It's a hardboard panel that you can get at Menards. And you can see I had this marked up at Paint Cedarburg. And what I do is I put gesso ground on there. And what is gesso ground? It's this stuff right here. It's golden absorbent ground. You can't just use regular gesso. That's not what it is. This is absorbent ground. And so the absorbent ground is something that has some kind of material in it that absorbs the watercolor when you paint. So gesso by itself is kind of acrylic and it stays on top. This will absorb into the panel, and you can pretty much put it on anything. You can put it on your shoes, canvas shoes. You can put it on a tabletop. You can put it on glass. You can put it on anything that it'll stick to, and then you can paint a watercolor on it because it absorbs like a piece of paper. So see, like I said, this is a panel, just a regular hardboard panel. You can put it on you can put it on a canvas panel also. I did that in my class at my last class that I had in Hazelhurst up there in Lakeland Art League. I had bought panels, canvas panels, and I just put this gesso ground on it, and then you can paint a watercolor on it. And actually, look at here, just really quickly, I'll show you a painting. 1 second. So this is a panel. This is just a canvas panel that I gessoed on it. And see how I just painted a regular watercolor on it? So it has the texture of the canvas, but it acts like a watercolor, piece of watercolor paper. So it's one way you then can then wax it and then put that on into a frame without glass or a mat board. And so that's the reason I'm kind of doing it. All right, so let's just get going with this little Betsy here, the cow. And so we are going to start like we always do, and we have 3 steps. And cheers again, guys. Cheers. Thank you, Katrina. Katrina, my student. Oh, I just poured beer on there. Sorry. So that's really, it's Juicy Peach, Lannenkugel's Juicy Peach, refreshing and easy drinking beer. Balances delicious softness with natural peach juice. So cheers, everybody. Cheers, cheers, cheers. And I really don't need that tonight because one big margarita was really enough. So here we go. We're gonna keep that dry up there. Not sure what it's like to paint with beer on your palette. Nice thing is that this acts like a panel. And here I have little paper towels. And so just not sure that acts as a good water basis to actually do your painting on with. So with our 3 step system that I use, the BeckerArt 3-step, we do our lights first. Remember, our lights come first. So what is our lights? I just explained that it's going to be the sky, the mountains, and the cow's face. And so we're going to go right in there. You act just like watercolor. I will wet the whole surface, and it acts a little bit like paper, but it does kind of repel a little bit depending on the surface and how you prepared it. Let me just get a little free space here. We had a really great class here at the Plymouth Art Center, and it was a really nice class. And we are really learning how to let people know how to float their pigment. And it's one of my big things now today in learning how to float your pigment. It's really important. And so that's what I'm going to do here too, is I wet the whole sky right into the mountains. Let's go right into the mountains, wet the mountains. And this acts just like paper. And the fact that it wets and absorbs in a little bit, it will not buckle because it is a flat sheet of board. It's a hard board. And so I'll go in here now and get my light sky that's very light up there. So real lightly, I'm just going to put a little bit of paint on top of it. Now, as you can tell, there's a couple of little spots here that are kind of dirty. And that I'm going to make it a little bit thicker. This paint will be a little bit thicker than I normally use. And I'll use a little bit of white in here. And I'll just go in here and get the sky. Now, depending on how you apply the gesso, sometimes the gesso ground, depending, you can use a roller. That'll make it kind of pebbly. If you use a paintbrush, you can get the brush strokes and it makes it kind of look like an oil painting, which is kind of a great thing to do when you're using a plein air frame later, because the frame then makes it look kind of like an oil painting, which then can you get more money for it. You can get more money for those oil paintings than watercolor. If you have a matte and glass on it, you tend to get less money if you're using a frame with matte and glass. And actually, there's a lot of galleries that will not take your painting if you have glass and a matte board on there. Sue Jacobson asked, is the core ground the same? I think it is. I have never used the core ground yet. If you use that, let me know if it is different because I don't like Daniel Smith's ground. Daniel Smith's ground is almost too textury. I don't want that much texture in it. I want to make the texture myself, and the Daniel Smith ground seems to be very pebbly, and I don't like that feel of it. It almost ends up being like an ampersand board. I don't know if you ever used ampersand board, and that is just, it kind of disturbs me because it is just too, it just absorbs weirdly, and then your texture is really weird. This now, on the other hand, is gives it a kind of a nice look, and it gives you the brush strokes of the brush that I use to put on the gesso. So that's actually a good thing. I actually like that because it kind of makes it look a little bit like an oil painting. And again, you can double your price of your paintings, in which I proved when I was in at the Cedarburg plein air event. I sold them like they were oils, and they, five of them sold, and that was a really nice, that was a really nice weekend. And so there's a sky. It should be nice and light. Now, when I do the mountains, I could do it now while it's wet and make them soft edged, or I can wait till it dries a little bit and then make them hard edged. And what will I do? I'll go into the face and maybe that'll dry by that time. This does dry a little bit faster because it's absorbing, and then it just gets kind of like dry pretty quickly because it's absorbing into the board a little bit, into the paint, the gesso ground. And if you have any questions, please let them know. I'll look up every once in a while to see. And so now we're going to do the cow's face. And so the cow's face is white. And I always say that you can use any color you want for the shadowing on white. And so I could use the blues, I can use the violets, and I will just go in here now and again I have to watch out because this has lines in it. I did with the brush stroke. You can see right here, there's kind of little bit of lines in there. And that's from the brushwork that I used to put the gesso ground on. This is the gesso ground, like I said, it's acrylic paint kind of that has I'm guessing they maybe put like marble dust or something in there to make it look like it's so it absorbs. And I think that they may use something like a marble dust, some kind of pigment that absorbs into the wash. So what I'm going to do here is just go with a light color. Just going to get the lights in the cow because his face is white, and so then I just put shadowing in there. And before I put the cloud or the mountains in, because the mountains, I want to have that hard edge, so I'm just going to wait for that to dry a little bit. And to give me time to put in this part of his face. And as you notice, if it acts like paper, and if you don't wet it, you get a hard edge. See, there's a hard edge. If you wet it, you get a soft edge. So all that kind of thing is the same. Once I taught you how to do wet in the wet and wet on dry, you will never have to worry about what you're working on because wet into wet. Oh boy, you got dark again in here. Hold on. Yeah, yeah, once in a while. Sorry, just have to get up once in a while. I worked out all my students so much today. They went home and I had them keep on working on stuff. So they're all very tired after I got them done today. So they're probably, except for Evie, I think Evie is watching. I know. Thanks for watching, Evie. And thank you, Evie, for getting me this gig here up in Plymouth. And so here we go. We're just putting this. These are my lights. Remember, you always do your lights first. And so I'm just getting in the the wash of lights. And once you wet it, you can put any color in there. You just let it float. Things float in here too, and you can go right into the dark. Like the ear is dark, so you can go right in there with your blues and purples and all these beautiful colors. You still try to get a beautiful wash. You know how I am all about washes and how you get these beautiful washes. That's still the same. Nothing changes there. And so all this stuff about getting these beautiful washes, it doesn't matter what material you work on, you still want to get that working in and wet into wet and wet on dry. That still is all the same. Nothing changes there. You just put that down and hopefully I can get this done in an hour. I have to work a little bit faster. And so now this is pretty dry. And I also can work it a little bit thicker like gouache. I can go in there and try to make it thicker. His mouth is a little bit darker, and actually it's in my middle tones, and so that'll be next. But I'll put a little bit of wash here just to kind of get it going, just so I know that this is going to be a little bit darker, his nose. I'm going to put my light there just so I have a little bit of that in there so I know that's going to be a little bit darker. I'm actually enjoying working on board like this because it gives you that texture that you can get when you're doing oil painting, and I really enjoy that kind of texture, that look. There we go, a little bit in the center, and you can't see me anyways because I actually the light is behind me, so you're gonna get me looking really dark, but you don't have to look at me anyways. Okay, so now with the mountains, the beautiful mountains back there, the Alps, and this Betsy is from Wisconsin, traveling to the Swiss Alps and getting a beautiful tour of the beautiful mountains in Switzerland. And so here now I'm going to get a nice blue, but that's a really bright, vibrant blue. So let's get a little bit of Verditer blue, which is more of a purple blue. Verditer, V-E-R-T, T-I-D-E-R, Verditer. So let's just go in here, and it's going to be a hard edge. And we're going to make it not wet first. I'm going to wet it as I go along, meaning that I don't wet the surface first. I wet it with pigment. And so I'm going in here and just kind of coming down. It's going to be a hard edge, maybe a little bit soft in some spots. It didn't totally dry in some spots. But it acts really a lot. Like once you know how to work with the paper and work wet into wet, it doesn't matter what you work on. It really can all be the same. It's amount of pigment you're using, amount of water that you're using in that pigment. And right up to the top of the cow's head. And see how it absorbs and it gives me a soft edge when it's wet. So it's a really neat surface to work on, and I would try to give it a shot. Now, like I said, you don't have to just use a hardboard. You can also use things like what's that board called? Um, oh boy, it's like foam core. Gator board. You can use gator board. You can use masonite. Masonite, you gotta watch out because if it's oiled masonite, then you have to watch out that the oil doesn't penetrate into the gouache or the gesso that you're using. Now his horns have a light outer edge, so I can go right up to the horn here. I'm wetting it with a blue, but when I go into this area, which is gonna be dark green, I'm just gonna go right into the area knowing that it's gonna be darker on top of that again. All right, you just go in there. And it does kind of bubble. See these bubbles in here? It kind of bubbles, but you know, everything you do may act a little bit differently, but it's wet in the wet, and that's all you have to worry about, that it is wet in the wet. The ear has a light around it, so I'll just take and get close to it. And then right up to the body. Now let's put in a little bit thicker paint, and let's put in the like the snow. There's a little bit of white, so I'm gonna actually use white and horizon blue. Again, please ask questions, guys. You know me. You gotta ask questions. You want to know about this board. And see, now I'm putting in white in a wet wash, and you know me, I don't mind using white. White is a substitute for the back of the board that I went over, and so I can get white paint in there. I do put it into wash that's wet so that it floats, and I'll give it a look of transparency because it's done in a wet wash, and it gives a really nice effect to it. Yes, it is not transparent per se, but it is very close. And so, see, I'm getting those little edges, and then I'll go in with a nice bright blue, little peacock blue with this verditer blue, and I'll get another little section right here, a little bit darker, a little ultramarine blue here, make that a little bit darker and a little bit thicker so that it'll stop right there. It won't bleed very far. When you use thick pigment, it will not bleed really far. It'll just stay right there and give you some beautiful washes, some beautiful edges. So today when I was teaching, I've been teaching how the first day is always about how to get certain washes, how to create washes and make them your own. Make them the kind of washes that you love to do. Is it salt? Is it whatever you do to make your washes very wet into wet and very beautiful? Now there probably should be a little bit of lime green in this, I think. A little bit of green in there. So I'm going to add a little bit of leaf green. That's kind of a new color I put in my palette, leaf green. So let's put a little bit of that in there just to get a little bit of turquoise kind of look in there. And it's not bad if you put thick paint on. Let's say you want to use it really thick and almost make it opaque. That's fine as long as when you put it in water, it bleeds a little bit. See right there what I did? I just put it a little bit thicker so that you can get a little bit thicker part of the painting. This board is very forgiving, as you notice. Look how forgiving it is. I go in there and I just apply it, and it just gives a softness when you're not even wanting a softness. It will just make it for you. It's very forgiving. You should try it. It's I actually really enjoy this when I'm plein air painting out on the spot. It's just really nice to use this material. I feel a little bit like I'm cheating because it is like a watercolor slash oil because it's giving me the look of a watercolor and an oil painting at the same time. All right, so there's my light. That's my light area. I know that it seems dark right here, but it's not very dark. It's my light area. So now I'm going to go in and get my big middle. Well, let's go in here first and get a little bit of the lighter parts of the greenery. And so for that, I'll just kind of wet it as I go along. Now he's going to be darker, so I don't have to worry about this line. I can go right into there. Don't have to worry about the body. I just go right in there. And it's a little bit lighter along this cow right here. And then I'll go right to a dark greenish color to show the foliage over here. And I'm wetting it as I go along. I'm not wetting it right away. I'm wetting it as I go along. That meaning that I'm not wetting it just with clear water. I'm wetting it with a brush that's dirty with some of my paints that I already have in my brush. I'll go around the ear. So now it's all wet. And I will, oh boy, I am looking at artist board on Amazon, but it's very expensive. Where do you purchase economical board? So boards, boy, yeah, it's like the boards that are wood boards are kind of expensive when you're trying to make them on like glue a piece of paper to a board. It gets kind of expensive. You can get ampersand board, or what I did with this one. Remember I showed you this one? Get yourself. This is from Walmart. This is a board that was just a canvas panel. It's only 11. This is 12 by 11 by 14. This is 11 by 14 board, and I just put the gesso ground over this. Now you're going to get the look of canvas, but if you put a couple coats on there, you can actually make it so thick the gesso that it kind of covers up that, or glue a piece of paper to that board, to an actual panel. But to use a wood panel sometimes is very expensive. So yes, um, if you're lucky and have a neighbor like mine, my neighbor for some reason works somewhere there where the pallets they put eighth inch plywood over their pallets of whatever they're shipping, and so he's been bringing it to me, and I just cut it up to my sizes, and so that's one way of getting it, but not good for other people. But if you can find something that is just, a board, yeah, I've seen them on Amazon. They're kind of expensive. I even think that you could put it on, what do you call it? Well, if you go to Menards and buy a big panel like this is hardboard, and you can buy 2 foot by 4 foot panels at Home Depot or at Menards, and you can actually at Home Depot you can have them cut it to the size that you want. So if it's 2 by 4, but you can maybe you have to figure out what sizes you can get out of it. But those are not too bad. Those are not too expensive. That I would suggest that if anything, just go to your local Menards or your Home Depot and get them there. Get your panels there. And they are heavy though. That's one thing. Another thing, they're heavy. But like it said, if you're framing them right after you get them cut and you paint it and you put wax on them, it really is a lot cheaper and you're getting more money for your painting. So in the end, it will be better for you to get better pricing for your paintings. So now we're going with my round brush. I'm taking my round brush. Oh boy, I got a bunch of questions here. Hold on a minute. Is it aquaboard? Yes, Ampersand makes aquaboard. That's kind of expensive. Cheap Joe's has it, and that's all ready to go. I don't like aquaboard, to tell you the truth. I don't like the texture of it. It's again pebbly, and I don't like that texture. So I would make your own board with the whole the gesso ground, the absorbent gesso ground. I'm gonna try to do something with marble dust. I'm gonna try to use marble dust as an alternative to put into regular gesso and see if it will act like a ground that'll absorb. Because the only thing about gesso that's different from this gesso ground is that it absorbs. It absorbs the paint so that the paint absorbs into the board and it acts like paper, which I really love. I actually really love that feel of that. And so I'm gonna try to. I ordered some off of Amazon. I ordered some marble dust. Marble dust meaning actually what it is. It's this white powder that's dust from marble, and you put it into your paint. And I think that's what many of these paint companies use to make their chalk paint or make their paint dull or make it absorbent. Like I think that's what they use on this gesso ground to make their paint absorbent, their gesso absorbent. So I'm gonna try that. I'll let you know how that works. I haven't done it yet. And Holbein makes a gesso that's colored, so I can even put down a colored gesso, and I'll maybe be able to make my panels like a color, a little version of maybe all light red or there's a lot of oil painters use a color base that's a little bit darker, so they can start out with a colored base. Now with watercolor, that may be weird. I'm not sure yet, but we're gonna try it out. Look at how. Oh, come on. There we go. All right, and so there we have the background, the mountain in the background. And I'm using it pretty thick to paint, but it's still wet in here, and it's absorbing super finely. I love how this absorbs into the panel. It really gives you a soft edge automatically because of what it is. It's absorbent ground, and it just really absorbs the paint right into the panel. And so it's different in that way because people were asking me, well, can I just use regular gesso? No, you cannot use regular gesso because regular gesso has kind of a a quality where it doesn't absorb into the painting. Watching away from home, but wishing I had my paints to paint along. Painted a buffalo recently. Want to see how you animal turns out. Okay, we'll see how the cow will turn out in a second. You can mix a bit of acrylic paint into your gesso to tint it. It's a trick the soft pastel folks use when making homemade surfaces. Okay, thank you, Chad. They use clear gesso cause it has a grit for soft pastels. Should work with normal gesso. All right, I'll have to give that a try. Thank you so much, Chad, for chiming in on that. That's awesome. We're gonna try that. So down here, it's still wet. And see, it takes longer to dry the panel, so you can go in here with thicker paint and it still gives you a soft edge, which I really like. It's a really neat kind of texture. Give it a shot, try it on different panels and see how you like it. I mean, I really enjoying working on this on the panel. Now it is heavy when you have a bunch of these around. Boy, it gets really heavy. Now I'm gonna wet the cow here on the dark parts because this is my lights. My lights are all done now, right? And so I'm getting into my large mediums and my large darks. And so I'm going to wet the area now, and I just have my brush, my round brush here. I'm wetting the surface of the cow. He does have a bell on, a big bell, which I'll go around because the bell will be a light on this side, which I did my lights on already. And so again, I wet it. Doesn't matter what color you have in your brush when you're wetting this, just wet it down. And now it looks like he's got a lot of darks, probably a lot of brown. But just because he's got brown, he's like a brown cow, doesn't mean you just make it one color. So I'll go in here with a brownish color, which I use imidazolone. It's called imidazolone. I'm not joking here. I'm not drunk or anything, but it's called imidazolone brown, and it's kind of a purple brown. And you're gonna put that in with, I'll put a little blue in there, make it a little bit, or purple, I should say, a little purple in there with the brown, and just kind of make it really dark and wet the surface. And you can see there is texture in here. Again, the texture comes from let me put something underneath my palette here so that I'm getting a little reflection in there. Sorry about that. And so I go up to his head and up to the bell. He's got a little collar on where the bell is hanging on a strap. He's got a strap there. And then again, I'm using imidazolone brown, going around his ear. Now his ear is dry, so I'm just gonna put on it dry with a wet brush. And then what I'll do is I'll add water to where I want the soft edge. So here I'm drawing it with it pretty thick. And then what I'll do to make it soft edge, I'll wet it. So that's another trick you can do with this board that you can't really do on paper as much. It's not as easy to do on paper like this. So see how it just is hard edge all the way around because it's dry. And then what you can do is just take a little bit of water, clean water, and take clean water and then just run it along the edge and it'll soften it instantly. See, I can just instantly soften the edge. And then I'll go down here, make this a little bit lighter. And then off the side of his back, I will make this a little bit lighter, and it's more of a tint. Tint meaning that I'm just using a lot of water and less pigment. It's a different feel, but it's still wet in the wet. As long as you learn how to do wet in the wet, you'll be good. You'll be very good, and you'll know how to do on any surface if you know wet in the wet. And that's what I teach a lot of my beginners the first day, and that's what we taught today in Plymouth here. We taught them how to work wet in the wet and work it so that everything is super, super wet and you control your pigment. And so now there's a strap onto the bell, and then here's the bell. And I get a nice ground. Now this is all wet. Remember, that's all wet. And so I can just go in there, let that bleed and let that puddle. Hey Tina, thanks for having everybody hit the like button. Love it when you guys hit the like button. Trying to get as many viewers as possible, just to get tons of viewers. Oh, and actually here, that's supposed to be the background. So what I'll do is I'll just wipe this out with my paper towel. It's supposed to be a little bit more green over here, so I'm going to take a little bit of green and put this up here because that's supposed to be the background behind there. But the nice thing about this board is you can also wipe out really easily too. Like you can with the Stonehenge paper, you can really wipe out really nicely. If anybody never has been to Plymouth, Wisconsin, take a trip here. This is a really, really beautiful little city, little town. I shouldn't say city, it's a town. Beautiful little town. They have a couple horses, I was gonna say, a couple cow sculptures. They have a bull, and they're the cheese capital. They have a big arch with the cheese capital, and the town itself, the beautiful little shops, beautiful, beautiful little shops. And this art center, unbelievable. You should see this art center at this place. Absolutely gorgeous. And they have a big stage and they have a beautiful gallery, and just you would never believe this is where it's at. It's just really, really nice place. So if you're ever around Sheboygan, Kohler, those kind of area up here in Wisconsin, stop by this place. West Bend, half hour away, I think. Come over here and see this art center. It's just a really amazing art center. I'm so fortunate to be able to teach in a couple places like this, and it's really fun to visit new places like this that you never knew existed. All right, let's see how you can get soft edges, how soft that became right there. So I'll go back in there and I'll get a little bit more in there. And it stays wet a really nice long time for some reason when you're using board like this. It really is. And now you may have to, sometimes you may not like what the texture you're getting, but you can go over that with a little thicker paint and it'll be fine. And so I'm going to put in a little bit of some of the curvature in in the cow here. And see, I can see his bell already, and you can see his face, and everything's kind of pretty much coming together really nicely. I'm going to do this ear here. And again, you can wet it as you go along. You just kind of go in here, take water with a little bit of paint. And I already have it on my palette. I'm going to make this more a rear rim lighting on there on the ear. I'll put a little rim lighting, and I'll do it hard edge first, and then I'll come back and I'll soften the edge. You can always soften the edge afterwards. You don't always have to have your edges hard or soft right up from the get-go. You can wet it afterwards and get those soft edges. So I'll just come in here, I'll just wet it, and then I will float beautiful colors inside his ear. I'll put it, because it acts just like paper. Now, it looks like part of his eye is part of this dark, so I'm just going to put his eyelashes, I should say. I don't know if he has an eyebrow. Do the cows have eyebrows? I don't think so. Eyelashes, though. And then his eyeball, which is dark. And then we're just going to put a nice little color in there. Put some red in there, make it warm. Same thing on this side, make it a little bit warmer. And again, this is all wet into wet. This is all soft edges. This is still looking like a watercolor. It's not like a oil or an acrylic. It's not that thick. It's not like a gouache. Gouache is very thick. You're using it. This is still wet in the wet. Still very transparent. It's still, I would consider a watercolor, even though it's on a panel. I mean, people start to think it's like, well, it's not a watercolor because it's not, it's like you're making it too thick to paint. And no, it's still thin. It's still thin enough to color watercolor. I'm still getting transparency. That's all still happening. And this is a nice hard edge right here. I will make this a little bit darker later. But let's go into now, this is my large mediums and large darks. Now I'm basically in detail stage, except let's do his nose here. That should be another big dark. So let's do his horns and his face. So the horns on him, we'll wet them. I'll rim light them so there's a little bit of white all the way around them so that the light's coming from the back, basically. The light's coming from here, hitting the back, and then coming down to this way. And we'll put a little bit of you can use all the colors that you see around it because the horn is basically white, right? And so you're going to just put in the colors reflecting what's around it. So anytime you're using white, remember when you're using white and shadowing white, it can be all the colors around that area. Just use all the colors and put them in there. Try to make it look three-dimensional by making it rounded. So one side will definitely be darker, one side will be lighter. And it's rounded, right? And it comes to a point. And let's do the same on this side. Wet it. And then we go in here and just put a little bit of dark in there. See, there we have the dark. And so the background also, like if you want to do more in the background with the Alps and stuff, you can still do that. But I'm still trying to do the big parts first. Okay. Sorry about that. If we don't move enough, then the lights shut off here at the thing. I don't really want to hear right now. And so we're gonna put this eye right here, put a little bit dark through here. And I have a little bit of watermark here, but what I'm gonna do is gonna make this all a little bit darker right here. And so I'm just gonna darken that up, which it is anyways. I'm gonna darken this up, make it a little bit darker, shadowing by his eye here. And then it goes up. And again, thanks for hitting the like button. I'm trying to get as many. Do you know anybody that wants to join? And every time I come to a workshop, I always get more people to join up on the Thursday night paint-alongs. They're all free, and they will stay free. And thank you, everybody, for all your nice comments and emails from my last week's newsletter. Not this week's newsletter. This week's newsletter was about this thing right here. This week we were doing lines with this thing. Super way to make lines, but check out my newsletter to see what I did with that. It's an awesome, awesome tool. I'm going to make this a little bit darker. And cross here. The best, I can't believe how well it is to make lines with that thing. I really love that thing. I love making lines now. Everything I do, I want to make lines because it works so well. I just did 3 commissions this on Monday and Tuesday. I worked on 3 commissions and they had lettering in there. And boy, you could just do it so well with that liner, with the paint liner. So this is white. Now we're going to do his nose. And nose are usually pinkish. So I'm going to take a little bit of pink. A little bit of pink, and if you don't have pink, use white and red together. Just gonna make it a little pink right here. Try to make it dark, and I'm gonna go with the middle tones first. I don't have to do the darks yet. The nostrils and the mouth are a little bit darker. And if you look close on this picture, if you're looking at this on your own system, you'll see that he has a lot of flies on him. And I'm not gonna put those in there. I don't want Betsy to have all the flies on his nose. You don't need to put that in there. So even though it is there, you don't have to put them in. You don't have to put all the flies in there. And then here's the nostrils. We'll make that really dark. We'll come down here. And you see how I'm wetting as I go along. I'm just wetting as I go along. And once it's wet, I apply other colors besides what just this one color. I'll put a little bit of lavender or whatever's around, like this blues and stuff. You'll put that in there so that it reflects. His nose is probably a little wet, and so you're going to get a little bit of that in there. So see in the front of his nose, a little bit darker. I mean, what a fun thing to do too with the, we're always painting landscapes and stuff, but isn't it fun to do something like a cow, it's just super fun to try to do different subject matter and always paint subject matter. I tell my students, paint subject matter that you know and love. Now, I don't know and love cows that much, but it sure is fun when you try something different and try something new and if you have a great picture, like I have here, and like I said, I did use AI to make this cow into a scene that was the Alps. I mean, it was not in the Alps, this cow, but I made it that way, and because I wanted to see it in the Alps, and especially with the bell. I love the bell on the cows. And so down here, we'll make this soft edge now, and now we're onto the bell. So there's this nose. I didn't put the darks in there yet. The darks. Actually, we can put a little bit of where it's located. So it's soft edged. So let's just put that in there while it's soft edged. If you try this board, you're really going to be amazed how much you can do in soft edges with it being just damp. You don't have to make it really, really wet, and you can still get soft edges. I mean, look at that. I just went into a wet area, but with a lot of paint, and it just really makes it look really, really neat. The fact that you can go in while it's damp and just put in paint it's a really neat way of painting. Now there's a little bit of darkness by his mouth too, so I'll put that in there while it's wet, and so that it'll get a soft edge. It's a little bit easier than paper when it comes to creating soft edges and getting your edges to be just soft without having a lot of water with a lot of pigment. It's pretty neat. You gotta give it a shot. Always try new things. You know how I always tell you guys, try different things, try new things. It may be your next style. That's what you are known for. I'm all about you creating your own style, and sometime you can become your own artist. That when somebody sees your painting, you'll be able to tell that that's a so and so painting because of you doing it that way and nobody else. Now I'm not sure what's happening here. So that is the, okay, let's see. I think this is part of the bell harness. And then that's his gullet, or what do you call that, underneath his neck? The gobble gobble neck here. So I'll put that in there, right there. Keep that light. Make it soft edge by just wetting it. Now let's do his collar for the bell. And now I want to make it a little bit different color. So I'm going to make it red. I'm not sure if they make them red, but the one I'm putting on this cow is red. So let's just make it nice and red. And then it goes right here through the bell, up. And then to make it dark red, we'll just use alizarin with the red. And we got 15 minutes left, and so let me hurry up a little bit. Bring this over here, make the edge a little bit. And it looks like it gets really dark over there, so let's take a little bit of Middelstone brown plus the alizarin and just make this nice and dark. And across here. Look at how Betsy looks, isn't she? Or is this a male? Is this male? Do the females have horns? I don't know. I'm not up on my horse, I mean not horse, my cow knowledge. I'm not a don't have the greatest knowledge of what cows. So let me know. Does a female horse ever have horns? I don't think so, right? I'm not sure. This would be a bull, right? This would be a bull. And or maybe not, because it's supposed to have milk, right? I don't know. Shows how much of a city guy I am, right? Very embarrassing. Any questions that I missed? Let me see. Watching away from home. Okay, Rita asked, how many coats of ground do you use on the board? It all depends on, I usually do about two. The first one to cover up the whatever, if it's a dark board, you want to put one coat. Females do have horns. Okay. Thank you, Tina. And so I put two coats on usually, sometimes even three if I want to get the texture a little bit thicker, and it all depends on what kind of texture you want on it. So yes, you can put as many as you want on there. I usually just use about two. Usually I cover it once and then I cover it again to really get the texture. The first one just to cover up the dark underneath there. Now the bell I'm going to make dark in the middle and leave both sides kind of lit up a little bit. And maybe you make one top part here a little bit red, like reflecting the red of the collar or the strap that goes around the neck. And see how just instantly you can get a bell there? And then I'm going to use a little bit of dark on the one side to make it kind of turn in this way. And the top of the bell looks like it's really dark, so I'm just going to make a really dark little part of the top of the bell on this side. All right. Now underneath here, inside the bell, you can see a little bit inside there. I'm gonna make it really dark. I'm actually just gonna use black and just put it in there nice and harsh so you see inside the bell. And right here, looks like it got a little bit dirty here. So see how you can wipe out things really easily? And I will still go into this area to get more texture because I didn't get quite enough texture in there. But that's part of the detail. I can use that as part of the detail. And I can also rub this a little bit right here. Watch, I can rub this and you can rub it and get back to a really soft edge. And also you can put in a light color. Like I can put in a light color, put a little white and lavender. And I can just put that right into the wash. And now this is more like opaque wash, which is fine though if you do it wet into wet kind of thing where it's wet, but you make it nice and thick. And you can actually blend it like a gouache instead of letting the pigment blend itself as in watercolor. So you can get to a certain point, you can switch over and kind of go into the gouache effect of the thing. Evie said that it's a cow. Okay, thank you. Both sexes have horns. Wow, I never knew that. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Boy, you learn something new every week on this. And now let's do his eye here. Let's do the eye on this side, the eye on this side. And I know they have eyelashes because in this they have eyelashes. They have little eyelashes and stuff. And that's pretty cool. I'll put that in there. Okay, now I'm on detail stage. And what is a detail? Detail is all the detail that you see in the photo. So I'm going to start out with the background and get all the little details and textures and details that I didn't get in my first and second wash of my big washes, because that's the big washes to create the big shapes. But when you get to detail stage, then you can get things like texture, especially on this board. So like here, there's no texture in the mountains and stuff. So I will just take the same color back up here and do a tint. I'm not going to do a wash. Wash is a lot of pigment. Just a little bit of the tint, and I'm going to go back up here, get a little bit of this, the texture up here, and I can do that like a tint. Just put a little bit of tint and get a little texture in here. Because I want to have a little bit more texture than I had gotten in the first wash. And it all works out good. You don't have to do a float your pigment. You just want to get texture. So I'm not going to go in and try to get a wet in the wet wash. I'm just going to get in and just use it like almost like a acrylic and get it thick and give me a wash, a little texture. So you can just get a little texture in there, which on paper is not as easy. This is because it kind of just blends right into the board. So it's pretty fun and pretty interesting how you can do that. Go right back in. And then, like I said, I will show you that you can just wax this. You can just wax it, and it becomes very, you don't have to put a mat on it. Just put it right into a frame. Put it right into a frame, and you're done. Come on. All right. Sorry about that, guys. It's on a timer if nobody moves, and I haven't been moving a lot. Okay, and so this is getting a little bit thicker now. This is more into the gouache kind of look, where I'm going kind of thick with the paint. All good though. It's all good. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to become a non-transparent person just because you use a little bit of opaque watercolor. It's all good. You just keep on painting all the different ways. It's good to try different things. You can do it half of it, hard edge, soft edge, gouache, acrylic. I can even go into acrylic with this. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some texture in here. I mean, it's pretty close, very close over here. Let's see, there's a little texture in there. So let's get a little texture in there too. Gonna go with a little blue in here and just get a little texture. How much time do we have here? Okay, about 8 minutes. And we're getting close. So I'll go in here, get a little texture. And so next Thursday, I will probably not have a paint party, or not paint party. I will not have a paint along. We've been talking about paint parties for my old place up in McHenry, but we'll probably not have a paint along because I will be in, where will I be? Next Thursday, I will be in Clayton, New York, and so we'll see if I have a paint along or not. I'm not sure yet. I may be in the middle of a class, but maybe. Well, so just keep on checking my newsletter or my website, and you'll find out if we have a paint along or not. So that's that. Now the clouds are the mountains and the clouds are all good. Now let's get a little texture in here. And what I do is I take a little bit of paper towel so I don't spatter all over. I do love spattering, you know me and my spattering. I will take a little bit of the paper towel over this, and I will take my brush, take a lot of like greenish, a lot of pigment of green, tap it on another brush like this. Also give it a little bit of texture and maybe even some in the field. And actually, look, I got it all over his face. And you can just take that and wipe that away. Put a little bit of green in here. Maybe a little bit of grasses. I just want a little bit more texture than what is just plain, simple wash. A nice even wash, because there's a lot of texture going on in there. Put a little bit of red in there. Just get a little bit. Again, this is just a wash. It is still in my dark area. This is supposed to be a dark area because, like I said, my light area is the sky, the mountains, and the face. So this really should be a little bit darker because it's part of my dark color scheme. And you have to follow that. You cannot go away from your color scheme and your value pattern. Value pattern is very important. It's almost the number two thing that's important. Then number one again it being the drawing, and number two being the value pattern. And the texture, that's just texture. That you just do to make it look neat, make it look interesting. That's what your washes are for. Learning how to do different kind of washes, some with salt, some with, whatever you use to make your washes look cool. That's what you want to do. There's many ways of doing washes, watercolor washes. Most of them have to do with doing it one time, one shot deal. Don't go back in over and over. And 4 more minutes and we'll be done here. All right, any other questions? Okay. Let's get this a little bit darker in here. Again, this is my detail stage. Even though I did a big area, it's still detailed because I put texture just so it looks like, this area has some plants and stuff in it, which is detailed. You can put little flowers in there, put little flowers in the background. I can do highlights of white on the bell. Maybe the bell is shiny, right? This little part right there, I'm gonna put a little something on. And the eye, I want to make sure that the eye is nice and dark. Yeah, look at that. Oh, look at her. Look at Betsy. She's doing great. She's holding still for so long there in Switzerland. And then we'll do a little bit of this on the side here. Nice thing is you can get so much texture afterwards and you can take this and actually make thick paints. So let's say I wanted to use this white, and I actually got to put some more white on my palette. Let's say I wanted a little bit of hint of that was like a opaque wash. And so you can make little dots and it's opaque, but hey, it looks fine because it makes it look shiny, right? Make a little shininess to it. Maybe I'm the horn. Maybe the horn looks a little shiny right on the edge here. And the ears have a little bit of hair. And only part I think I need to get a little bit of this blue and we'll be done in 2 minutes, which is the only time I have. I'll make this a little bit dark because that's dark right there. So that was a little bit of quinacridone with a little green. And we're gonna make this a little bit dark to indicate that it's going across here. And bring it up through here. And the thing is, I don't have to take tape off or anything tonight because it's basically on a board. And so what would I do? And let me just show you really quickly what I would do to wax it. I would let it dry and I would take this wax. It's called Dorland's wax, Dorland's medium wax. I would just open this up, let it dry. Don't prepare it or anything. You can just use this. Actually, one more thing here I just noticed. One more thing. I just want it a little bit darker right here. Too dark, too dark, too dark. Let me just put this a little bit darker right there. There we go. Hold on. A little bit darker right there. All right. So then you take Dorland wax. This is called Dorland Wax Medium. And what you do is you open it up. See how this is just wax, basically. You put your hand in there, take it out, and just rub it across your paper, or across your paper, across your board, whatever you did it on. Now it has to be a panel because if it's not a panel, how do you take a piece of paper and mount it to a frame? You can't. So you somehow need to glue that paper to the board before you paint. I usually like to do it before instead of after, and then just take and wax it. Let it dry, put one coat of that on there, you're fine. I like to use two coats of that, but so I let it dry overnight. And then when I come back in the morning, one more coat just to get it a little bit more protected, and you're good. You're good to go. And just slap it into a frame, a plein air frame. You don't want a watercolor frame because the frame is too thin, but it'll work out great. And so there you have a beautiful picture on a board. You can just frame right away with a frame with no glass or no mat board. Gamblin makes a good cold wax as well if you can't find Dorland. Thank you, Chad. So Again, try to get away from using glass and mat board because let me tell you, you get a lot more money for your paintings if you don't use glass and mat board. And though now you can't use a watercolor frame that's really thin, try to use something a little bit bigger. All right? So thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me here at the Plymouth Arts Center in Plymouth, Wisconsin. Awesome, awesome place. Please come to visit. If you're in the area, please come to visit and check it out. And take a picture of you and the cow. Now it is a black and white cow, but all good. You know, cow and cow. And thank you, Tina. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Don. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Evie, for letting me come here and actually inviting me here. And so I will be here tomorrow to teach my second day here. And then actually next week I'm heading to Canada. So I will be in Canada next week, and then I will head down to the Thousand Islands, New York. And so if you want to take me in Clayton, New York, I will be in Clayton, New York next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And that's where I'm teaching in Clayton, New York. If you're in that area in Clayton, please stop by and take my class there. It's a 3-day class for the Thousand Island Art Center in Clayton, New York. All right. And so until then, cheers, everybody. Cheers to you, Kugel.